Hi everyone, I'm Andy.
Hi everyone, I'm Amy and we're from Tales from the Heart.
Yes, it's that time again for lockdown storytelling. It has definitely been a while, hasn't it?
It's been way, way too long, if I'm honest.
I've grown a beard since then, more of a beard.
Measure
Um,
time through Andy's beard.
it's been this long. Um, so yes, we have a story for you today. Even though the lockdown is all being well coming to an end, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. The story today is from the Volsunga Saga, which is a Norse saga that was recorded in medieval Iceland. Although it goes further back than that, and there have been representations of the characters and the stories from this saga found on crosses and runestones in Sweden, Denmark, the Isle of Man, and mainland England as well. And Britain. Yes, it's a great story. It's one that we've never told any of before, but we've spoken about the idea of doing it in instalments. Now, while we don't have a time frame for that, I'm sure we will revisit it. But this is the first part of that saga where it all begins. This is the story of the Children of Hreidmar. Once, long ago, there was a dwarf of magic, of powerful magic, called Hreidmar. Now he lived in a house by the river with his three sons, Fafnir, Otter, and Regin. Now Fafnir was the eldest of these sons. He was a powerful dwarf. His power was in his strength, and he used that strength to bully his brothers. Otter was the middle brother. Now Otter had a strange gift. He was a shapeshifter. Now, some of these shapeshifters from the tales could turn into great bears or wolves or monsters. He chose to take the form of, well, you guessed it, an otter. And he didn't like going on grand adventures. He didn't like going and being fierce anywhere. What he liked to do was to lazily swim about the lakes and the streams and the rivers, eat fish and lie in the sun. Now, Regin was the youngest, and to him was given the power of craftsmanship. None could match his skill in smithing weapons or crafting jewels. He was also the slyest. Now one day Otter was fishing by his favourite spot near a waterfall called Andvari's Fall, named after another dwarf that was said to live behind that waterfall in a cave. Now on the far banks Otter could see three strange travellers making their way along lazily in the afternoon sun. Now the leading man was a man in a great grey cloak and a great wide-brimmed hat, with a staff that thudded into the turf with every step. He had one eye. Next to him, just behind, was a similarly built fellow. He was bright, where the leader was grey. He shone like the morning sun. And behind him, kicking at his heels, was a handsome, flame-haired man. Otter thought this a strange party, but thought nothing of it as he carried on looking for fish and swimming about and playing.
On the bank, Odin was content to enjoy his morning's walk in Midgard, our mortal world. He was listening to a story his brother Honir told him. Loki, however, grew bored, and a bored Loki meant trouble was near. The god of fire and mischief saw the bubbles of that fishing otter. A small smile spread across his face. Say, Honir, I bet you cannot catch us a fish to eat with a stone.
And you can? Asked Honir.
I'll wager you a purse of gold when we return to Asgard that I can, and you can't.
Nonsense. It's way too far.
Loki laughed mockingly. Are you too scared, bright one? The mockery was too much for Honir, who accepted the bet. Odin said nothing, just frowned and watched, as Honir threw a mighty stone into the water. They waited, but no fish bobbed up to the surface.
There, trickster. I missed that one, but I would like to see you do any better. The god of fire picked up a stone and waited. And waited. Any time you are ready, Loki. Honir scowled. And just as he did that, a glitter of silver and a splash was seen from the far bank, and Loki quickly threw his stone. High into the air it arced and fell down, down, and down into the water. Up bobbed an otter, quite dead, with a fish in its mouth.
"Ha! There!" Loki laughed in triumph. "And a lovely otter pelt to go with it. I'll make a purse out of it all for that gold. Eh, Honir?" Honir said nothing, but watched angrily as Loki crossed the water and got to skinning the otter. They made a good meal out of the fish that had been caught, a great pike, and as night fell, the gods decided to find a place to rest for the night before returning to Asgard in the morning. They came upon a house, and wearing the disguises of mortal men, knocked upon the door. The owner of that house was Hreidmar, who at once recognised the pelt that Loki carried to be that of his son. He said nothing, though. He offered the strangers beds and a warm meal. Soon after the meal was eaten, each god fell asleep, as a spell of enchantment had been laid over their food. When they awoke, they were tied to 3 chairs. Each rope that bound them was enchanted to prevent them from escaping by the powerful magic of Hreidmar. None of the gods could escape their mortal forms in order to get loose.
"You have murdered Otter, my son, a shapeshifter," Hreidmar spoke gravely. "And now you must be punished for it, even if you are Odin, Honir, and Loki."
"Hold," Loki said before any could speak. "I killed Otter, but to be fair, I had no way of knowing who he was, but I will pay Vergild a blood price for it. Just name it."
Hreidmar, he hesitated for a while. He wanted revenge, more than any payment, but as he was a fair dwarf when he wanted to be, he finally spoke up with a compromise. "You will go and fetch enough gold to cover my son's hide completely. If you can do that, not a piece of fur is showing beneath the gold, then I will consider the debt paid. But you have only until the morning to fetch it."
"Of course," Loki smiled, and when he was unbound he left, making straight for the waterfall where he had killed Otter. Loki knew that the place was named for a dwarf that lived there, just as well he knew that dwarves loved gold and kept hoards of it. Andvari the dwarf saw Loki coming, and he knew nothing good could come of it, and so he ran. Loki, being a god, easily caught up to him, who used his magic to turn into a pike, leaping into the water and swimming away. Loki just laughed, and making a net from the grass and the plants around him, as once Ran, the sea goddess, taught him how to do, he cast it into the water and he caught the pike.
Struggling and wriggling, the dwarf finally changed back into his true form. Loki smiled sweetly and threatened to kill him if he didn't hand over all of his gold. Now, Andvari loved gold, loved it more than nearly anything, but not more than his life. And so he agreed, and when he was released, he walked to the side of that waterfall, just into that cave, and tapped on a rock, a hollow-sounding rock, twice. The rock cracked open, and inside, in a small space, the floor was covered with gold. Heaps of it lay glittering, spilled all across. And he started scooping it up, resentfully giving it to Loki.
When it was all done, Loki paused. "What about that glittering arm ring there, dwarf? Did you think I wouldn't notice you hiding it?" The dwarf had indeed kept an arm ring back for himself, thinking he could at least save that one piece of his treasure.
"You would take even this little thing?" the dwarf asked desperately.
I think it'll make a fine gift for Odin, who'll hopefully forgive me after the mess that's just been made."
The dwarf hissed and spat, but finally handed over the ring to the fire god. "But know this," he said, "I give you now and Varanot." Now, Envaranot was a famous ring in its own right, heavy with magic. This ring, worn about someone's arm, would help them find riches and gold. All of my hoard is gone, and without this, I don't know if I can get a new one, so whomever keeps it now, I doom to nothing but bad luck and sorrow. And with that curse, the dwarf took once more the shape of a pike and dived into the water. Loki only laughed and made his way back to the house where Odin and Honir were being kept.
Here, I have your hoard as agreed, wizard, Loki spoke, as if he'd just popped off to buy some bread, not gather so much gold. Lay out the skin, and let's see if it's enough. And so they did, and soon all of the gold was upon poor Otter's skin. However, one little patch of fur could still be seen in the glittering metal. With a sigh, Loki threw the arm ring he had taken onto it, covering it entirely. Hreidmar's eyes lit up, all thoughts of revenge gone now, as he eyed the gold greedily. When Fafnir and Regin untied the two gods, they quickly left. Loki, however, stopped by the door. Richly have our lives been paid for, yet it will do none of you any good. With a wink, the trickster was gone.
Hreidmar quickly scooped up all of the gold and hid it away in chests, and there that gold remained, the chests unopened, apart from every now and then when the dwarf would crack them open and have a look inside, just wanting to see the bright glow of that treasure. Now, Regin often thought of the treasure himself, but he busied himself with his crafts and took his mind from it. Fafnir, however, thought of nothing else. He protested that surely it should belong to all three of them, as Otter's death had been a tragedy for all of them, not just their father. Now, these protests, well, they started bickering, and bickering turned into arguments, and arguments turned into fights. And it was one such fight that in the heat of the moment, Fafnir grabbed his blade, and before he knew what he was doing, he had run his father through. His eyes were glowing bright with greed now. Regin couldn't believe his eyes. He asked what his brother had done, and Fafnir turned on him. Regin knew better than to try and confront his brother in his rage, strong as he was, and so he fled. The only thing he took with him was his blacksmith's hammer. Now Fafnir did not spend any of this gold. Instead, he kept it in the chests. He closed the shutters on the windows, peeking outside, worried that thieves would come, and soon that worry became so great, he decided that the house was not safe anymore. He would flee onto the moors nearby, taking all of the gold with him. He found himself a cave where he hid, only leaving occasionally to hunt and gather water, and soon, the curse of the gold fully upon him, he wouldn't even do that. Instead, he collected rainwater from the walls and ate the rats that crept inside the cave. The treasure turned him into such a beast, soon he became an actual monster, no longer in the form of a dwarf, but of a great, fierce dragon, killing anyone that got too close to his cave and his treasure. He would guard that cave until the end of his days. And eventually the end of those days did come. But that, my friends, is a story for another time.
That was the story of the Children of Hreidmar. Thank you very much for joining us today for this lockdown storytelling. We hope that you enjoyed it today. We have got a bit of news for you. It's great to actually be able to say that we've got some news. Andy, can you tell us a bit more about what that news is?
Yes, with the latest guidance coming out with in regards to outdoor events, we are looking with the current roadmap to everything opening up to be able to start putting things on this summer, following a similar guidance to what we did last year in terms of distancing and keeping people safe. And then it's only going to get better, really. We've got some fun stuff coming up. We've got a different type of story walk and event planned for the summer. Hopefully something we can run in the summer holidays. It's going to be a little bit different to what we usually do, but geared towards families, which some of our stories will be taking us on slightly different routes. We've also been approached by a couple of other people and organisations that are hoping to work with us a little bit further afield in Hertfordshire, so hopefully going to be learning some new stories for that. Some really, really fun stuff coming up. And then obviously, as far as we know, the heritage walks will be going on as they usually do, and that's a bit of a main event for us really, because it's where we all started, that and Heritage Day. And yes, and then it's a way off now, but around next Christmas we'll be getting on with planning our Ales and Tales, which is the evening stuff that we do with adults, sat around in the pub telling stories. Two of my favourite things, I think.
Yeah, it was a shame that COVID put paid to our plans to run that last year, but hopefully at the end of this year, all being well and everything looking positive, we'll be able to run that again, which will be fab, because it was great to run stuff in a pub, and it's yeah, it would be great to actually see you in person again as well, because it's been a while. Time's passing in how long your beard has grown. So
Yes, yes. As I mentioned earlier, yeah, the beard is marking how long it's been since we've seen each other, I think. So yes, we will hopefully revisit the online storytelling soon. We'll have to stop calling it lockdown storytelling soon, because there won't be a lockdown anymore. Hopefully, but yes. So next time I'm back in Hartford, maybe. Amy and I can do a bit of socially distanced storytelling and put another one up online, potentially another one of the Volsunga Saga stories, or maybe something different. We'll see. But until then, thank you for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
yeah, take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye bye.